This is a production of Cornell University.
We'd like to thank the Barbara and Davis Zalaznick for their generous gifts in making this reading happen, as well as the Freund Foundation. Please turn your cell phones off if you haven't done so already. Helena Viramontes is right there. If you get her mad, she turns green and she gets her clothes ripped. She becomes this thing, I don't know. So please turn your cell phones off and so they don't ring. There are times when the establishment misunderstands a writer, and they feel that a writer who is of a certain age or of a certain gender, a certain sexual preference, or a certain cultural background or color is swimming in waters that are off limits to that particular writer. Herman Carrillo writes like no other writer, and he definitely writes like no other writer that happens to be or comes from Latin American origins. His sentences are these labyrinthian, twisting, turning tunnels that lead you all over the place, but always brings you back where you started, never letting you get lost. His novel, Loosing My Espanish, is this wonderful Joycean novel in its time frame. It is one lesson, just one lesson, the last lesson in a professor who's about to retire. In that one lesson, we see an entire, not just life, but an entire world. And we see influence from José Lezama Lima, influences of Elajo Carpentier, influences, of course, Joyce, and I'm sure others. And they're all tied together by the genius of Herman Carrillo. I really believe that sooner or later, the establishment will see the brilliance of Herman. And to quote Langston, they will see how beautiful he is, and they will be ashamed. It is with great honor for me to present to you the elegance and the eloquence of Herman Carrillo.
Well, thank you very much, and I guess welcome to your shame. I want to thank everyone and the establishment, actually, for putting this together, for the invitation, and for thinking about me. I'm going to be reading from a brand new novel that's called Twilight of the Small Havanas. And it's a novel, oddly enough, you remind me, that takes place in one evening, and it happens to be an evening in which it's announced, probably for the 1100th time, that Fidel Castro is dead. And it's told by four characters, and the character I'm going to introduce this evening, this is her introduction to the novel. I don't really know what her birth name is. I have no idea what her mother named her, because when she immigrated from the island to the United States, she changed her name to Nancy Sinatra. Seamos realistas, hagamos lo imposible, is tattooed in Gothic letters across the boy's shoulders. A blue, green, purple, and yellow snake slithers through the A's and the O's, wraps its body around the peaks of the M's and the S's, and coils its tail around his left bicep. Excuse me. The rattle tips upward in such a way that at first she thinks the deafening of cicadas to be searing from the shock of black fur coming out of his armpit, rather than from the opposite side of the pool. The blacks thrown off by the water lit him as he walked around the concrete lip of the pool, slowly unwrapping the cummerbund from around his waist, folding it and placing it at the end of the shallow end. His shoes, his socks, his shirt, and he steps naked out of his trousers and makes his way around to the back, to the foot of the diving board. And the head of the snake on his arm seems to want to twist to look at her. Its eyes and mouth wide, fangs poised, as it hisses out the Cuban flag. She strains her eyes and shakes her head, makes sure that she isn't dreaming. Her entire body cries out in rebellion as she lifts herself out of the bed and is confronted with a reflection of herself in the mirror above the fireplace in her bedroom. Too old to be so blonde, too thin to be so tanned, hair flattened on one side where she slept. Nancy Sinatra was more surprised to see the woman standing in front of her in her bare feet and full slip, rather than the one that she thought herself to be earlier that afternoon at lunch. By their third or fourth cocktail, the years seemed to melt away, and the man who had once been her lover somehow resuscitated the bloody lust they shared to see the dictator dead, viscerated and real, as if, as they had often planned it, they'd done it themselves. And she'd lost count of the number of drinks he had ordered around the time she started calling him Solorzano. And a giggle she hadn't heard, giggling in decades, kept erupting from her lips, no matter how hard she tried to control it. He must have helped her out of her car, and she remembers calling him Tutti, something she can't remember calling him for years. Everyone called him Tutti back then, but she realizes she's gotten used to telling him what to do without ever saying his name. He picks her up, he fetches her drinks, remembers her birthday, sits outside of dressing rooms, all without her asking. He either guided her or carried her up to her bedroom. His handiwork is all around her. The jacket she had been wearing earlier at lunch folded precisely in half and smoothed flat on the daybed with the skirt that matched it. He was dependable like that, loyal like that, impossibly vulgar and repulsive like that. And when they still slept together, he fucked just like that. And it's the common, fresh and cannibal, the taste, a bile of Manhattans in the back of her throat that she's barely able to keep down when she suddenly hears a spring of the diving board and turns to the window down in the garden just to see the naked boy fly below her. Scrawny, pale, she can't tell if it's that he, whoever he is, has gotten past security, or if it seems that he's so comfortable, welcome, floating on his back in her pool that causes her to bite the edges of her tongue raw. Nancy Sinatra looks down to see her hands in frantic flight, and she rushes to her bed table and grabs a carafe sitting on the top by its neck. Sending the stopper flying, she gulps directly from the open mouth. And as much as the burn comes with the 3 or 4 swallows soothes, her neck and scalp crawl, not because of the lipstick stain she sees as she sets it back down, but because of the vanity that she bothers to have vodka decanted into carafes. And as she reaches for the bottle, unsure if she's intending to empty it or smash it, or both, she hears the boy coughing. A gentle gust of wet, warm air comes through the window and rides across her bare shoulders, making her feel suddenly immodest and sending her to choose her white marabou wrap over the pink or blue one. And something insists that she reapply lipstick until her mouth is turned into a red, hard gash instead of her signature petal pink. And for a moment, she steps back and looks, plans to order the boy out of her pool and off her property, threaten to sick dogs she doesn't have on him, and call the security team, which consists of 2 retired policemen at the front gate. And yet, she finds herself swallowed by half wishes of wonder if she still has the ability to lure him upstairs just to tell them that she doesn't want him. No time for ice. She spills some vodka into a glass and takes the stairs 2 at a time. On her way, she imagines herself standing at the far end of the pool, throwing her hair back and looking her nose down at him while allowing the wrap to fall open, revealing what she believes she still has that makes any man want her as much as fear her, revealing what it takes to make the boy naked in her pool want to run from her with a painfully hard erection. Though, Crossing the line, she's stopped by one wet foot. And though hesitant to look, she realizes that as she stepped out of the grass onto the patio, she's wearing one of the heels that she's worn earlier and one yellow marabou-covered mule. She's nearly ready to turn back and correct her mistake, refill the half-empty glass, when the boy, floating on his back, pushes an amber fountain of piss that crests nearly 4 feet above before splattering back into her pool. She drains the glass and drops it on the grass. Before what washes over, I'm missing page 6. I'll catch you up. She has a desire she begins to collect his clothes. She collects his shoes. She collects his pants, in which she finds 2 wallets and a wad of cash, and she takes the cash out and she stuffs them into the cups of the bra cups of the full slip that she's wearing. And she throws the wallet away. And she finds the cummerbund, she finds the shirt, and she resists the urge to smell the shirt. Because one of the things that she's kind of committed to is that ever since she was a little girl, she's figured out that to have a man, you had to take them by surprise, otherwise you were theirs. And this was long before the differences between little boys and little girls, at least the fundamental ones, were forced upon her. And then she finds his jacket. She nearly holds her breath with excitement as she steals her way to the shallow end of the pool, where she finds that he's hung his jacket, the one to the tucks, on the rail that leads into the water. He is facing the diving board. She watches as the back of his head, and as the idea to drop the jacket in the water with him crawls over her scalp, she nearly screams with anticipation that tastes ancient. As she chokes it back down, she's surprised how heavy the jacket is. She first checks the breast pocket, where she finds yet another billfold. She doesn't bother to go through it and tosses it when the revolver falls out and scatters on the pavement. She knows what she's supposed to do. She's had years of training, nearly 30 years, of what to do in the event of an intruder. She's been waiting for just this moment. She should barricade herself in the room, call security, call Solorzano, and wait for men. Yet, the boy rocks in the small wake she's created in the pool that threatens to push him up again and spit him onto the lawn. As he turns face upward, ribbons of blood twist and bloom as if unfurling themselves into an enormous pair of giant wings, strong enough to lift him up straight into the sky, broad enough to hover as canopy over her. Kept afloat by the flutter of one hand at his side, the other does not seem to move, seems trapped in a helix of a fat red serpent. Because she can't see it, she assumes it to be the one that was on his back, and it's crawled off in the water, and Nancy Sinatra tries to look for its head, its fangs, its tail, when the boy says, "Don't do that no more." What, she asks, don't do what? The boy gulps in the pink water as if gathering purchase. He says, "Don't do that no more." Pricks as if she's being dragged headlong through fields of nettles, run up her fingers, across her arms, her shoulders, and flush her raw through the scalp. Her elbows jerk over and over as if the gun were still firing in her hand. Santo de santo, she prays, though not loudly enough to hear the harsh whisper, ayúdame, señora, ayúdame, por favor. Nancy Sinatra opens and closes her hand around the butt of the gun as it clicks, empty, empty, empty in the air. Ayúdame, 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 she whispers. Thank you.
I want to remind everybody that there are books for sale in the outer part of the auditorium, and books by all of these authors. So please take advantage of that and buy the books. Also, there's a reception after the reading upstairs on the second floor. I can't remember the room number, but you will find it. Just follow the crowd, and there's a chance to talk with the readers. And I think we usually have some kind of food and drink up there, at least drink, something to drink. So, yeah, the reception, please attend. Please, everybody's invited afterwards. Okay, so it's my honor and pleasure to introduce two world-class poets who happen to be graduates of our MFA program. The first to read is Sally Wen Mao, and I had the hardest time writing these introductions. I've written a lot of introductions, but these were hard because there's so much I want to say about them. Sally graduated in 2012, and her debut collection, Mad Honey Symposium, which was essentially her MFA thesis, was published by Alice James in 2014. Sally's work has appeared in Poetry, Tin House, Best American Poetry 2013, and many other marvelous places. She's held fellowships at Kundiman, Hedgebrook, Loaf, and she recently received a 2017 Pushcart Prize for her poem Anna May Wong Blows Out 16 Candles. Yeah, it's great. Amazing what people do. This is just, they blow me away. Her second book, Oculus, begun during her time at Cornell, has been accepted by Grey Wolf, which is fabulous, and is forthcoming in 2019. Last year, she was an international writer-in-residence at the National University of Singapore, and she's currently a Cullman Center Fellow at the New York Public Library, which is a dream honor. All they ask you to do is to be present and to write. So it's kind of a dream for any writer. Now, to tell you just a little bit about Sally's work, she writes with a breathtaking assurance and linguistic brio. She's a poet whose innovations seem effortless because they arise from her character and passions. The textual surprises are generated by an obsessive engagement with language, a fresh intelligence, and a heartfelt commitment to her subjects. Her first book, Mad Honey Symposium, is a fierce and delightful work. After I finished reading it, my head was spinning. I felt barely grounded by gravity. Reading it was like taking hits of pure oxygen. The language is that dazzling, and this linguistic fervor exists to suggest a content that is always rich, complex, and important. She's one of the very few poets I've known who combines an original language with a conscience made amply evident in the poem's content. I was continually amazed by the passion, the energy that Sally brought to her work. Again and again, I was struck by her imagination, her insatiable appetite for words, and her ability to apply those strengths to explorations of complex, ethical subjects. The charged surfaces of her poems are matched by their feral depths. Rather than shy away from complications of content, Sally Mao embraces the possibilities without sacrificing the music or beauty of her work. Her Chinese-American identity and heritage are central to her poetics, and she also explores powerful conflations of animate and inanimate entities, as well as other surprising portmanteaus. Her poems, often narrative and sometimes beautifully oblique in their lyricism, are crafted with a formal elegance that owes more to free verse traditions than to traditional prosody. In addition to her imaginative skills, Sally is a disciplined writer. Firmly committed to the demands of her craft, I can think of few writers who manage to be so prolific while consistently crafting polished, audacious poems. I guess what I'm trying to say is Sally Wen Mao is a force. And I think I just mispronounced her name, Sally Wen Mao. She's a force. Her wildness, her witness are original. Her gift is blazing. I prize both her daring and her meticulous control, the mind and the nerve and the love that make her poems the amazing things they are, passionate and cerebral, touching and funny. Her poems surprise and electrify with their high voltage moves. So listen and be energized. Sally.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Alice, for that introduction. Wow, now I don't know what to say. Thank you, Cornell, for welcoming me back. It's only been 2 years, but it feels like a lifetime. I owe a lot to Cornell, and including the writing of this book. And I figured I would start with the first poem from Mad Honey Symposium. Valentine for a Flytrap. You are a hairy painting. I belong to your jaw. Nothing slakes you, no fruit fly, no cricket, not even tarantula. You are the caryatid I want to do wet in tongues. Luxurious spider bed, blooming from the ossuaries of peat moss. I love how you swindle the moths. This is why you were named for a goddess, not Botticelli's Venus, not any soft waif. There's voltage in your flowers, moat skeins, armory for cunning loves. Your mouth pins every sticky body, swallowing iridescence, digesting light. Venus, let me swim in your solarium. Venus, take me in your summer gown. So I'm going to read a poem that I wrote here. It was very cold here. So this poem is called High Bun for Thawing. I long for an immigrant in my bed, one who is unafraid of knots, one who will arrive with hail in his eyelash, one whose memories are muddy as mine, one who guesses the words of his own father's dialects, one whose skin leaps to touch mine, one who follows the floodlights north, one who discovers a hideaway crouching with his palm above his throat where it's warmest, one who trespasses arboretums soaked in manic light. I long to measure his body by its immateriality, its ability to seep through borders, someone formed from a womb of passage. Together we will incubate, one sleep, one tick, one uncombed head. Too far from winter, the distance to each face grows. Quiet, said my wish. Okay. I will read a section from this poem called The Pickpocket, and so this is based on a story of a school, a mythical school outside Bogota in Colombia. That's a university for pickpockets, and yeah. Anyway, lesson 6. Pick the lock before the pocket, so any prison they build for you will lead you to another corridor, dank with spillage from imagined cargo. If it's cold, do not shiver. If it's hot, do not sweat. Pick the boy whose backpack is light. Pick the boy with the sooty fingers and the slippery jacket. When you take from him, leave the morsels. Leave the picked over bones, pickle the food you don't eat, and store it in a metal box for your future self to consume, because your future self will always be hungry. I'm going to read a few poems from my new forthcoming collection called Oculus. And one of the central projects, series within this collection is based on the story of where is it? Do I have it? Is based on the story of Anna May Wong, who's an actress from the golden age of Hollywood. And so she was born in 1905, and her heyday was probably the 20s and 30s. And she was born, she was the daughter of a laundroman, and she was born in LA. If I can find it. Maybe I don't have it. Okay, well, I'll read the first one then. This one is called The Toll of the Sea. And this is based on the first film that she starred in. And the only thing you need to know is that it's the first Technicolor film with two colors, red and green. And it's a retelling of Madame Butterfly. Green means go, so run now. Green, the color of the siren sea, whose favors are a mortgage upon the soul. Red means stop before the cliffs jag downward. Red, the color of the shore that welcomes. White, the color of the man washed ashore, from his shirt to his pants to his brittle shoes. White, the color of the screen before Technicolor. White, the color of the master narrative. Green, the color of the ocean so kind, not leaving a stain on the white shirt. Green, the color of the girl so kind, but why? She speaks. Alone in my garden, I heard the cry of wind and wave. In the green girl's garden, the stranger clamps her, asks, how would you like to go to America? A lie soaked in the red of the choke cherries that turn brown in the heat. Red, the color of the roses that spy. Red, the color of their fake marriage. White, the color of the white man's frown. She asks, is it great lark or great sparrow you call those good times in America? Green, the color of his departure. White, the color of the counterfeit letters she sends to herself. White, the color of their sun. White, the color of erasure. Red, the color of the lost footage. Red, the sea that swallows our stories. Red, the color of the girl who believed the roses. Red, the color of the ocean that drowns the girl. Red, the color of the final restoration. In every story, there is a Technicolor screen, black, white, red, green. In every story, there is a chance to restore the color. If we recover the flotsam, can we rewrite the script? Alone in a stranger's garden, I run. I forge a desert with my own arms. Blue, the color of the recovered narrative. Blue, the color of the siren sea, which refuses to keep a white shirt spotless. Blue, the color of our reclaimed Pacific. Blue, the ocean that drowns the liars. Blue, the shore where the girl keeps living. There she rises in the opposite shore. There she awakens, prismatic, childless, and free, shorn of the story that keeps her kneeling. Blue is the opposite of sacrifice. Okay, okay, well, I think the poem I was looking, here, I got it, here it is, okay. So this poem is called Anna May Wong Blows Out 16 Candles. And the premise of my Anna May Wong poems, they're personal poems with the exception of the one I just read. And basically my experiment was like, what if she had a time machine and she could travel into the future of Hollywood and cinema. And, I mean, she died in 1961. Okay, Anna May Wong Blows Out 16 Candles. When I was 16, I modeled fur coats for a furrier. White men gazed down my neck like wolves, but my mink collar protected me. When I was 16, I was an extra in A Tale of Two Worlds. If I didn't pour someone's tea, then I was someone's wife. Every brother, father, or husband of mine was nefarious. They held me at knife point. my neck in a chokehold. If they didn't murder me, I died of an opium overdose. Now it's 1984 and another white girl awaits her sweet 16. It's 1984 and another white girl angst about a jock who kisses her at the end of the film. Now it's 1984 and Long Duck Dong is the white girl's house guest. He dances drunk, agog with gong sounds. All around the nation, teens still taunt us. Hallways bloat with sweaters, slurs. When I was 8, the boy who sat behind me brought pins to class. Do Asians feel pain the way we do? He'd ask. He'd stick the needles to the back of my neck until I winced. I wore 6 wool coats so I wouldn't feel the sting. It's 1984, so cast me in a new role already. Cast me as a pothead, an heiress, a gymnast, a queen. Cast me as a castaway in a city without shores. Cast me as that girl who rivets center stage, or cast me away into the blue where my lips don't touch or say. If I take my time machine back to 16 or 20 or 8, I'd blow out all my candles. 16 wishes extinguish and burn. The boy will never kiss me at the end of the movie. The boy will only touch me with his needles. So I have a few more. One more anime, one poem. So this one is called Anime Wong Makes Cameos. Okay, Romeo Must Die 2000. I'm Aaliyah's sassy friend. I give her tough love and good advice. Kiss Jet Li, I tell her. The director cuts their kissing scene, replaces it with a hug, rendering my scene pointless, so they cut me from the film. Kill Bill, 2003. I'm Gogo Yubari's grieving twin sister. In my nightmares, Chiaki Kuriyama swings her iron balls over my futon. The noise maddens me. To avenge her, I lunge with a steak knife at Uma's white veil. I die as my bones crunch under her heels. The Last Samurai, 2003. I'm Tom Cruise's love interest's younger cousin. I cry at the sound of a twig falling down. In the end, I am sacrificed so they can shed tears and take comfort in each other as my spine goes limp. Holla Back Girl, 2004. I'm Gwen Stefani's arch nemesis, the cute Asian girl who dissed her behind the school bleachers. Once I was her backup minion. Now no more. I've gone rogue. Pharrell is the other cameo. Together, we conspire to take her down. There are claws. There is glore. In the end, the showdown is cut in favor of Gwen's cheerleading routine. Memoirs of a Geisha, 2005. I'm Gong Li's evil apprentice geisha. I trip young Sayuri with my silk sash. I set her kimono on fire. The rival Okia crackles and burns. As the beams fall down in ashes, lightning whips the howling door. Dew drips down my forehead, my jewels. In the confusion, I perish, of course. Okay, okay, just 2 more. So this first poem is my Pokemon poem. I wrote it like a year ago, but there's a town in Pokemon called Lavender Town, and there are a lot of urban legends surrounding this. It's a level on the original video game, and it's where all the ghost dead Pokemon are buried, and there are all kinds of weird like urban legends, including like hundreds of Japanese school children, once they reach that level, they have been found like walking confused on the road, and yeah, lots of weird urban legends. like dark ones too, you know, they like kill themselves in some of these. Anyway, Lavender Town. Don't let the sour flowers fool you, child. This town is a dead town. The tower tolls to your trill, your heartbeat, inaudible to everyone except you. You listen, you hear. Ghost notes, discordant leaves clutter the earth, tin and wrestle, a lachrymose bird cries, a graveyard glistens. When you climb the stairway, don't shield your eyes from the pixels, 30 hertz heat. Don't shield your awe from the ghosts of pretty prey, the ones you catch when you're alone and afraid. Lavender Town, noble purple town, plumed, perfumed, dream of violet fields. Can you hear the killing machine sing? What secrets hide? Why run? Why hold on? You walk by the side of the road, biting an apple as you wave your thumb. Blood sickles down. A rebel you are, a hitchhiker, a tiny savant. When you grow up and the screen lights up all your blind spots and you replace the dead green cartridge with a blank one of your making, you'll arrive at last at the final battle. Maybe then you'll find that the game you're playing is a hack. You thought you were invincible. And just like that, the boss KOs you. And other times, you're astonished at your own breath. Other times, you thought you were dead, but your body was eternal all along. And just one more. So this poem is inspired by a piece called 1,000 Boats by Yayoi Kusama, the artist. And I read her biography this winter, and she said that she has this death fear. She's really afraid of this thing. And you'll kind of get it from the poem. 1,000 Boats. Summer 2013, at the Stedelijk Museum, the boat overflows with handmade penises. In 1963, the artist sewed thousands of these despite her abject fear of dick. Revulsion transforms into a burial, a ritual of obliteration. In her autobiography, Kusama wrote, "It was only by doing this that I gradually turned the horror into something familiar." Imagine having a penis phobia, then stitching 1,000 phalluses together, gluing them to the hull of a ship. Imagine the nightmares, a choppy sea, a monster gust, icy rain, and tumbling oars, a bed of black mambas, swarming the only lifeboat in sight. I imagine rowing that boat to a place far away from any flesh and blood I know. Far away, the world bursts into infinite colors, wisteria, gunpowder, smells long extinct, returning to the senses, like phantoms. Sail through this fear beyond its dirty haze. Every penis is a liminal space. I surrender, cure my bloodlust, cure my penis envy, no, my phallic frenzy, with the spell of red flowers and a dragnet for fools. I venture into the orgiastic summer, and though my fear is never cured, I dream harder, adventure deeper. Obliteration, turn your everyday horrors into what's familiar. Obliterate doom, obliterate time, obliterate enemies. Go where you don't recognize the flora or fauna. In a dazzled forest, crown yourself with your fears. Thank you.
Adam Price was a student of mine, but I take no credit for his development as a writer. His sensibilities, his style, his voice were long established before he met me. What I appreciated about Adam was that his stories were always ambitious, they were always full of range, they were always full of scope. He was always looking to hit a home run. Never did Adam submit a 5 or 6 pager saying that this is all he had, or that he was a slow writer, or that a story that he had already submitted the semester before with slight changes, which is basically the same story. Or never did he wrote a Twilight Zone episode, some story with some cheap punchline or predictable ending. His stories were always a notch below or way above the story that he had gotten into this program with. Adam Price always was looking for the home run. And when he struck out big. And that was all right, because that is what he was getting paid to do. To read us from his bottom of the ninth. 3 men on, 2 men out, 0-2 count. Game 7, down by 3. Shot heard around the world, Adam, the Grand Tour Price.
Hello. Wow, what an intro. That was great. These intros this should really be the intro reading, I think. The intros are great. Also, every penis is a liminal space. I would think I'm gonna put on my tombstone. Okay, so to read the first few pages of this book, because doing so requires no contextual explanation. If it doesn't make sense, then it just doesn't make sense, I guess. And I think this is around 10 minutes. Oh, I wanted to say first, and I was filled with terror when I saw Emily's written remarks, because I realized I hadn't done that, but at lunch, Ache said something that resonated with me, which was, he said, I don't know if you said these were the best 4 years of your writing life or your life, but that really rang true for me. I think the 4 years I spent here were maybe the best years of my life, honestly. So it's really a great honor to be invited back for this and see so many familiar faces. It really is meaningful, so thank you very much for allowing me to do this. Okay. Chapter 1, October 2005. Sir? No. Sir. Someone shook him awake. A blonde woman blurred into view. He looked up at her, momentarily uncomprehending and depersoned. She was bent close over him, gripping his shoulders with painted fingers, engulfing him in her cloying perfume, a mist of candied strawberry. Yes, he said, feigning full consciousness. You have to leave. Yes. You have to leave, sir. The hostile corporate courtesy in that sir brought him closer to his senses. She wanted him to leave, but leave what? As his vision cleared, his first clue was provided by the blue tunic she wore with a winged insignia over the breast. Another clue, quickly following the first, was the row of seats behind her, telescoping forward to a point where his bad eyes couldn't focus. It all came back to him in roughly the form of a second-person haiku. Your name is Richard Lazar, and you are on the first stop of your book tour, and you took too much Ambien. Where is everyone, he asked, grappling futilely with the thin airplane blanket twisted around his arms like a straitjacket. They already disembarked. I've been trying to wake you for a while. I thought you might have, that you were... No, apparently not. In one violent motion, he wrested the blanket away from himself and rose to his feet, nearly falling sideways into the flight attendant in the process. She stepped back with her hands in front of her, palms up, as though giving plenty of space to a person having some sort of a fit. He steadied himself, unwedged his suitcase from the overhead compartment, and lumbered down the aisle, jouncing side to side on dead legs. A friend of his back in Phoenix had given him some pills to take to make the flight easier. Well, they had done that, he thought. Combined with the pint of vodka he'd polished off in the plane's bathroom, they'd made the flight very, very easy. The only problem was actually getting off the plane. He Frankensteined it through the cabin and up the long jet bridge and emerged into the fluorescence of the shabbiest boarding gate he'd ever seen. He hadn't seen many, the result of a lifelong fear of flying coupled with a general disinclination to go anywhere, but this was certainly the shabbiest. Several ceiling panels were half rotten with brown water stains, and one was missing entirely, providing a nice view of the filth-caked girders above. A darkened McDonald's brooded to itself across the empty room. A tall kid wearing glasses, a backpack, and the faintest ghost of a beard stood alone holding a sign. R.M. Lazar, it said in big block letters, each of which seemed to have been laboriously filled in with a Sharpie. He rolled his suitcase up, and the kid held the sign to his chest, as though to protect himself from a blow. His fine brown hair was swept in a delicate fringe across a high, worried forehead. Richard assumed the hairstyle was an attempt on the kid's part to hide what looked like a palimpsest of acne. "Mr. Lazar," the kid said. "Richard, you're Lance." "Vance Allerby." Vance lowered the sign and extended his hand with a look of such dignified, grave ceremony that Richard had to fake a coughing spell in order to disguise very real laughter. "Wow," he said, "excuse me." As they shook, the kid took a breath and launched into what was clearly a rehearsed speech. How, on behalf of the university, how happy they were, how if there was anything they could do, and so on. He concluded, "And as the founding member and president of your regional fan club, the Warl Ox, I just wanted to say that on a personal level, this is a real honor for me." "On behalf of the what?" Richard disengaged his hand. "The Washington Area Richard Lazar Auxiliary." It took him a few seconds, with Vance looking at him expectantly, but he finally got it. "The Warlocks. Jesus Christ, how many other Warlocks are there?" "At present?" "Yes, at present." Vance blinked at him. "Well, right now it's just me, but I'm hoping to expand the operation." Richard teetered on his rubbery legs, resisting the urge to look around and see if he was being fucked with. He was struck by a feeling that had become common, almost unremarkable over the last year, that without realizing exactly when or how it had happened, he had been transported to an alternate dimension. This dimension was similar to the one in which he'd lived his whole life, but at certain moments, such as this one, he became transparently outlandish and far-fetched. Recently, for instance, a man who signed his missives Sergeant Ricky had obtained Richard's address and begun sending him maps of Vietnam with certain cities crossed out. It was nice to have fans, too bad none of them was sane or female. "Well," he said, it's an honor to be here. Which way is out?" "Oh, sorry." The kid grabbed the suitcase handle and led Richard through the ambitiously named main concourse, a whitish hallway that featured a shuttered newsstand, a shoe-shine operation on indefinite break, and a moribund subway. A lone TSA agent leaned against the wall and mumbled jargon into a walkie-talkie held sideways. "How was your flight?" asked Vance over his shoulder. "I have no idea." "Have you ever been to Spillman before?" "Like so many things in my life, somehow it never happened." Richard gazed fondly at a small bank of rental kiosks they passed, thinking that maybe it wasn't too late to call off the student escort, but they were already pushing outside into chilly, damp air, climbing onto a moving sidewalk. Vance walked ahead, but Richard stopped and caught his breath. The overcast sky looked like a dirty sheet pulled over the horizon, the sun a dim flashlight behind it. Everything in the vicinity seemed to be painted gray by the drizzling mist. The sidewalk deposited him in the hourly parking lot, where Vance was already loading a battered Ford Explorer. Its rusty trunk was a patchwork of bumper stickers. Carrie Edwards 2004, of course, but also Coexist, Subvert the Dominant Paradigm, Eschew Obfuscation, Bluegrass Players Do It Cleaner, and a decal of the USS Enterprise. Vance opened the passenger door and Richard awkwardly hoisted himself up and in. He looked at the hand-lettered sign in the back seat and imagined Vance bent over it, pen in hand and tongue in the corner of his mouth. The image produced in him a surge of unwelcome affection for the kid. They drove in silence on the highway for several minutes, during which time Richard could feel Vance glancing over at him, working up his nerve to say something. The kid took a deep breath and said, "I love your books." "Thanks. Without Leave is probably my favorite, but I've read them all." "Well, as president of the Warlocks, you'd have to, right?" Vance seemed to be considering the question. "That's true, I guess," he said. Then after another moment, "I'm a writer too, you know." "No, I didn't know that." Maybe, he thought, he could quietly undo his seatbelt, crack the door, and do one of those stunt rolls down the sloping adjacent hill that overlooked the town. Maybe he'd wind up at his hotel. "I mean, not like you. I've lived here all my life." Vance gestured out at the landscape, which mostly consisted of aging 70s strip malls interspersed with pine trees. "You've done things. I like stuff that has the force of experience behind it. You can tell." Earnest intensity radiated from the kid like heat off blacktop, and Richard had to resist the urge to disabuse him of all the ways he was wrong. They drove in silence for another quiet minute, during which time he sensed Vance drawing another extraordinarily deep breath. Finally, the kid said, "Actually, I recently finished something. If you have time, maybe you wouldn't mind taking a look at it?" Sure, Richard lied, guessing he would probably mind it a lot. Keeping his eyes on the road, Vance leaned back and felt around on the back seat and produced a copy box from Kinko's, which he laid on Richard's lap. No rush, he said, but I'd love to know what you think about it. I'll try and take a look soon, Richard lied again, with deep regret at having said yes to a student escort. Why did he always make the wrong decision? Why? Why on earth had he agreed to this? Well, he allowed, because he liked the idea of someone picking him up at an airport with a sign, that was why. Because it sounded like the royal treatment and not a royal pain in the ass. Also because he planned on having a few drinks to celebrate his first night on tour, and he liked the idea of having a driver. Pride as ever going before a fall, live and never learn, that was his credo. The road they were on curved up a hill, and the city, such as it was, stretched out in the valley beneath them. The buildings were meek and low, mostly constructed from beige brick, and the overall effect was a kind of apologia, as though the city fathers had tried to create as close to the impression of a kind of non-city as was possible, while still in fact having a city. The inoffensiveness of it offended him. Phoenix, enormous, desiccated, crime-ridden, meth-infested golfing community that it was, at least didn't worry about hurting anyone's feelings. That's the college, said Vance, pointing to the left side of the vista, where there were more trees and more beige buildings. That's where you'll be speaking tonight. What is that? Joel Whitaker Auditorium, said Vance grandly. I see. Do you want a tour of campus, or I could show you downtown? I thought I heard something about a hotel. Oh yeah, you're staying at a Comfort Suites. A Comfort Suites by Marriott. Thank you.
So now it's my pleasure to introduce Emily Roscoe. Emily entered our MFA program with the Javits Fellowship, and while still a student, she won the prestigious and competitive Ruth Lilly Award from Poetry Magazine. She was pretty much an acclaimed poet from the minute she got here. A few months later, she received a Stegner Fellowship to Stanford, and her first book, Raw Goods Inventory, which was essentially her MFA thesis, won the Iowa Poetry Prize. And it was published by University of Iowa. And it also received the 2007 Glasgow Prize for Emerging Writers. While Emily was here in the program, I noticed that she never let any of these honors go to her head. She is one of the most grounded, compassionate, generous, empathetic, and modest poets I've ever known. After Stanford, she completed a PhD in creative writing at the University of Missouri. She edited an essay collection, A Broken Thing, Poets on the Line, which was published by University of Iowa Press. Her second collection, Prop Rockery, won the Akron Poetry Prize and was published by the University of Akron Press in 2012. Emily also is a dedicated educator whose teaching was honored with the Spencer Prize at Cornell and the Donald K. Anderson Award at University of Missouri. She's currently associate professor at the College of Charleston, and she also is poetry editor of Crazy Horse magazine. Emily's first book, Raw Goods Inventory, is a beautifully crafted work composed with attention to formal aspects, but yet it's never inhibited by them. Her poetry is gorgeously made, but it also retains enough fragmentary edginess to earn the adjective raw. Her poems are exquisitely honed, yet they feel alive rather than studied. There's a powerful emotive and cerebral undertow to her meditations, and always something at stake. Materialism, the substance of things and bodies, is one of her subjects. And Raw Goods Inventory is a book of objects that memorialize emotions and temporalities that can't be objectified. Roscoe also is a poet of things half-finished or undone, of process and dissolution. She is, moreover, a writer who confronts the largest ethical dilemmas while still retaining the reticence and complexity necessary to poetry. Her second book, Prop Rockery, is composed of sonnets and longer poems that take their titles from lines in Shakespeare's plays and are voiced by beggars, actors, buffoons, and all that tribe, as an epigraph from Horace suggests. These unstable monologues and playful restagings often are concerned with the location of power in language and psyche. The rocks of a theater set are given voice in the title poem, a meditation on the antithesis of dominion, on ground rather than figure. Ambiguous, complex, and beautifully made, such poems gesture toward the performative while avoiding drama or literalism. They're fractured, dense, heady, continually emergent poems that riff on scenes and themes from the plays with a freewheeling elusiveness, and they remake platitudes with Shakespearean flair. In other poems, Emily manages to reimagine the tradition of nature poetry within a contemporary context of eco-poetics. Wind, the stuff of lyric poetry, the force that strummed the lyre, is one focus of these honed meditations, whose language is at once gravid with substance and filabrating with space. This wide-ranging, inventive body of work makes Emily Roscoe one of the most thrilling poets writing today. Her brilliant work, and really too her way of being in the world, have always made me want to read and write. And I think that's the highest compliment and praise that one writer can give another. Listen and be mind blown.
So, first, thank you to the Creative Writing Program, to the faculty for this amazing gift of this Alumni Award, and for bringing me back to Cornell's campus yet again. So nice to be here hearing other fellow readers, and thanks everyone for being here. I just want to say it's been 13 years since I finished my MFA here. And between then and now, I've been other places, parts of other workshops. And I've studied with other poet professors. But as more time passes, I've really sharply come to understand how formative these really quick 2 years at Cornell were. All these years, the critics that have kind of stuck in my brain are my Cornell teachers. When I write, I hear Alice Fulton say, maybe that ending could be different. Or, I need more of the good strange in my lines. When I write, I try to imagine earning Ken McLean's radiant smile, and if I'm lucky, make him jump up out of his seat a little bit. I write to make Phyllis Janowitz laugh, and to have Deborah Tall remind me that sometimes, the most important thing in a poem is what can't be said. Sorry. Getting emotional. So I still write with their presences and these lessons in mind, and I'm so grateful for their influence. I have 7 poems for you, so you can count them as I go. You'll know when we're getting toward the end. And I'm gonna just kind of run through the chronology of my work. I'm gonna start with one poem from Raw Goods Inventory. Even before your elbow knocked over the glass. First, there were the broken pieces. You said, "Don't you think I know what I'm doing?" To which I replied, "Don't you feel most alone when we're in this together?" Under the eave, wasps are constructing a nest. Gray paper out of spit, so much of the body is in their work. See how the legs move, bending and praying. You said, "Don't you think I know when you're trying to change the subject?" I could make a building out of my despair. We could acquire a nice piece of land and sit on it. There are 1,000 blades of grass, each one waiting to be claimed. As I always say, you said, if you commit one sin, you commit them all. To which I said, how many absolutes do we have proof of? The sky has never looked bluer. What is the significance of that? It means I might walk out on you yet. What, you asked? Nothing, I said. I said nothing. What is there to say anyway, except in the sunlight, I could see the glass fall even before your elbow knocked it over. This is always how it happens. Certain ideas are never fully formed. This is some mess, you said. To which I said, there are lives that go on this way. Then we went down on our knees, and in that manner we began. Two poems that I'll read from Prop Rockery. And just as a whole, this book is invested in persona and voicing the underdog, who are the sort of outlier characters. And the two that I'll read are ones that take a line from a Shakespeare play as their title. And just in case you're taking notes, this first one's from Titus Andronicus. In thy dumb action will I be as perfect. It all became weight. Tolerate the conditions, the two, and the much. It was a drippy mix of sensations, a blood for beans mentality from the start. We were bustled up with pomp, the flashing of rhetoric, the proper rites carried out to a T. I was bottom feeder, I was bunk. I delivered the sure-footed their forecasts, doctored to their sure-footed forecasting needs. A win-win for the disingenuous, a sore for the Mao at ease. What matter that the high heavens spoke law, that reason relied on the flimsiness of appeal? We applauded it, glassy-eyed with doting. In turn, we were shaven, truncated, unadorned. I went, bad shot to mouth, elemental as salt. I was a long line of example, not first to be put to show. Stone-set time of the tilling fields, row of sharps and picks, the insweep, the overfill, that which plucks the fowls that stirred the dust. Sing, shifty earth, the dirt reminds me of the evil I am. This title comes from Othello. Let me be thought too busy in my fears. So it fell out like this. Went to the edge of daybreak, a golden gulf racked with fog. There the earth grew older, there the birds tweeped their little riches from the brambly crisscross of hawthorn. It was a jaspered moment, a mutt formation, an incremental hue upon hue. I fit myself inward, a spleen-racked mind to be better, a knack for staging the upsets, the empire. I turned my innocent side out, knavery's plain face, and fessed up to my brothers. They were sap-filled to the heart. Because love's its own embargo, a charted unknown, self-painted in self-same colors. Because fear-flung they squander. I made a mock hobby of the elect, I played to their heel, I planted the itch. They sat pups to my lips, whelped by their rule of seize and plunder. Then night turned out day, and in short, there was an earth crash, a backlash, and now I'm chained as a liar, a flinty streak with no fire. The next two poems come from a third book, Weather Inventions, which is out circulating the world right now. And this is a book that relies on the history of the development of the sciences. And it sort of looks a lot at different evolutionary inventions that organisms have undergone or technological inventions of science that are often used for war. The first one, Arrow, is actually an anagram poem. It comes from Hamlet's To Suffer the Slings and Arrows, titled Arrow. A war, or a slain row of sirs, gents, grandsons, now garlands, again the liar's snow, a snarl of wording. Low in the grassland suffering. A frost the awns sharpen. Furlongs drawn to rift the fur-sawn gruffness, a ruth-torn stringer. Oh, this word sings the narrows raw, or inward snags organs whole. Worse, laws the songster, owl to swan. I ungreen this tree with thorn, rough run the hunt, drawl in tear and air. Fern. Even as inside as you are not yet inly enough. I know you with your folding in, the start of the fern frond, snail-tight curl, the whisk and horsetail which unrolls a quick-scaled green forming, uncoils its scrollwork of fiddlehead, shepherd's crook, which seeks the ground no seed or flower to concentrate on, even as in shade and poor soil it thrives. Only you go the other way, tighter knot, false part of unfurling. Sink to dirt a deeper bed those roots, my love. Two more for you. You doing all right out there? Okay. I just thought I'd ask. I know it's long reading. This comes after Larkin's High Windows, Marriage. And this is pretty brand new work. When I've got nothing to say to you, and you've got nothing to say to me, then I know we've reached a perfection we've been dreaming of all our televised lives. It's a white blank field of no dreams. Down on knees this pew requires, as I contemplate the hows and whys of martyrdom and the saintly vows to Christ our Lord, shepherding out wolfish urges to skulk and stalk the pricely wares this fine green bright day of rest. We are one long fall in tandem, you and me, glossing the heavens with our small cries of we and woe. I am cautious mostly, you too. We've gone deep in this pasture of what lies ahead. We've scrutinized every blueness, sky, wave crest, diamond, shard. A comprehensive glass through which we face one another, partial, self-seen. So we live in Charleston, South Carolina now. I've been there seven years, and I still very much feel like a tourist, and a lot of it's just because of the presence of all the history and recent events that have happened there. So I'm trying to find ways to write about it, and the best way I can do that is to sort of enter it sideways a little. So here's one Charleston poem that I think is successful. The Feed Game. The antiquated stench of the town, horse piss, salt marsh, rotting shoes and wood, and upward our noses turn. Ballast-packed streets, the ships unloading wares to market, handled and nameless. We've got our science minds on tonight. We sit inside a clapboard house playing Solve for Mouse in hospital gloves at the dinner table. It's a subpar game, so we tweak the rules to monopolize the dice. Each possible portion is overstudied, the bends and crooks, the ivories severely bright. Silk drapes torched indigo by shadows the fire brands. Something muddyish was dragged across the rug. If we find the answer, we will serve it on silver to the one cat we love. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, it's always such a delight and such a pleasure to have our own students return because they were our students and then now they're published writers, you know. The creative writing program offers lectureships paid for in part by the generosity of Philip Freund, Cornell class of 1929, whose will provided our program with an endowment intended to benefit creative writing graduate students. Since 2011, the Philip Freund Creative Writing Fund has enabled us to offer the second year of lectureships to our MFA students. But his generosity doesn't stop there. The endowment has also made it possible for us to celebrate our students, now published writers. The endowment allows us to fly the alumni in and recognize their dedication and hard work by awarding them certificates and a $5,000 stipend each. Our Philip Freund Prize alumni readers are H.G. Carrillo, por favor. Okay. You don't leave now. Sally Wen Mao. Here you go. Wait, hold your applause, You're good. Adam O'Fallon Price, aquí. And of course, Emily Roscoe. Please, let's all give him a great hand. Remember, the books are out there. Please buy them. The English Department Lounge, $258 for reception, drinks and food, and you get to talk to these wonderful people. Thank you so much. Thank you.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.